Whilst the appointment of the two special advisors may not have violated the principle of legality, it was ill-advised. It resulted in suspicions and perceptions of political involvement and influence in respect of the procurement process.
I recognize the offence caused by my tweet on the 16th of March 2017 with regard to the legacy of colonialism.
That is reached to after consensus.
We are not talking about a negotiated political settlement here. We have long moved out of that. This is a GNU with special characteristics, in which we talk about the normal operation and functioning of government.
Well, first of all, parties can walk away, clearly, but then there's a price to pay.
I'm guessing that if you are watching this video right now, you are familiar with a South African politician called Helen Zille, who served as the chairperson of the Federal Council of the Democratic Alliance Party. Now, just like most of these politicians, she has been involved in some corruption scandals as well, and a lot more. But through it all, she was somehow able to make it back to the top. Without wasting any more time, let's dive to the fall and rise of Helen Zille. Author Helen Mary, best known as Helen Zille, is a 73-year-old South African politician who was a former journalist and anti-apartheid activist in the late 1970s. And she was so good at it that she was one of the journalists who exposed the cover-up around the death of Steve Biko. In her political arena, Zille has served as the Western Cape MEC during 1999 to 2001, as a Member of Parliament during 2004 to 2006, as the Mayor of Cape Town during 2006 to 2009, and as the Premier of the Western Cape during 2009 to 2019, and is currently serving as the Chairperson of Federal Council of the Democratic Alliance Party. Now, if you think that in all these years and promotions she has kept it clean throughout the whole way, well, think again, because you are about to find out some disturbing things about her. So back in 2010 to 2011, when Zille was the Premier of the Western Cape, someone used the Sunday Times newspaper to expose a scandal over communications tender in the Western Cape. The Sunday Times reported that Zille's office had awarded a 1 billion rand communication budget over 2 years to the agency TWA Hans Lascaris without following the proper tender procedures. Sunday Times stated that the tender was not publicly advertised or placed on the government tender bulletin as required by the Treasury regulations. The tender basically dated back to 2010 and was described as a 1.5 million rand contract for the Premier office, and since it was transformed from a tender for the communication needs, a new tender process should have been initiated. Obviously, Zille came forward with a statement denying any wrongdoing and said it was a complete nonsense. The public protector found the Western Cape government guilty of maladministration, improper conduct and wasteful expenditure. However, the contract to TWA or Hans Lascaris remained valid.
Whilst the appointment of the two special advisors may not have violated the principle of legality, it was ill-advised. It resulted in suspicions and perceptions of political involvement and influence in respect of the procurement process.
The provisional report leaked to the media found the contract was invalid. Western Cape Premier Helen Zille threatened legal action against the protector for material legal errors at the time. The ANC says the final report smacks of complicity.
We are very disappointed by the report because we feel that there are substantive issues that we raised, that were also raised in the preliminary report, which we feel that have been watered down. Clearly the intimidation of the public protector by the Premier, that she will take it to court and all that has influenced this particular outcome.
Zille welcomed the findings and contends the debacle was a waste of the public protector's time and cost the taxpayer hundreds of thousands of rands. The DA under her leadership has however asked the protector to investigate a slew of complaints.
The report shows above all that the entire exercise was a storm in a teacup, stirred up by our political opponents. We appreciate the fact that the public protector took our comments and those of our senior counsel seriously.
No charges were laid against her and everything was simply forgotten about. Seems like Zille's threat to take legal actions against the public protector worked after all. Now tell me, what are your thoughts on that? During February 2010, Helen Zille shared statements with the public that Jacob Zuma had undermined the battle against HIV and AIDS, and people called her a hypocrite for that.
We can't avoid the issue of HIV and AIDS. It's one of the most threatening factors facing South Africa's future. He can't ignore addressing that issue. But when he raises it, you heard the murmur running around the entire house. He has no credibility to speak on that particular subject.
Here's why. The former Western Cape provincial minister called Leonard Max allegedly had an extramarital affair, and apparently there was a form of harassment and improper relationship in the office. However, Helen Zille denied reports that he would face any investigation for, and people called her a hypocrite for trying to run away from her own matters. During November 2015, the ANC laid charges against Helen Zille alleging that she hired a senior police officer called Paul Schippers to spy on the ANC.
DA leader Helen Zille says the transcripts of the spy tapes provide her party with sufficient evidence for an application for a review of the 2009 decision to drop charges against President Jacob Zuma. Zille says she has studied those transcripts of the tapes handed to them by the National Prosecuting Authority last week, while the party threatened to return to the Gauteng North High Court should it find any incriminating evidence against the president.
I think that they provide us a basis for continuing with our review application to review the decision in 2009 to withdraw charges against President Jacob Zuma.
She was then set to face impeachment on the 31st of November 2015, and guess what? She won.
My Democrats, this is one of the most important days in the history of our democracy, because we stand before the Supreme Court of Appeal. And the Supreme Court of Appeal has said today, we are all equal before the law. None of us is above the law. And if anybody is suspected of a crime and there is a case to be made against that person must have his day in court, whether that person is the president or a pauper.
The ANC basically lost to one woman who claimed on camera to have spy tapes against the ANC and Jacob Zuma. As I stated before, Helen Zille has her own corruption scandals, and another one of those is her relationship with the Gupta family. Apparently, on the 28th of February 2013, it was revealed that Helen Zille received a donation from the Guptas amounting to 400,000 rands around the year 2010. And she verified the claims and revealed that she had visited the Gupta's home, which was where the first transactions were made. This is what she basically said.
And my colleague Ian Davidson duly went to the Gupta's home, ate some of the most delicious food I've ever eaten, and then we received a check for 200,000 rand from individuals who made the pledge.
So all this time, Helen Zille complained about Jacob Zuma's relation with the Guptas, knowing very well that she's part of the team as well. Another sign of hypocrisy. During the year 2017, Helen Zille shared some disturbing comments suggesting that colonialism was not all negative. These are the posts that she shared. The DA was then forced to take actions against her, and she was later suspended.
That's just arrived, and it's not a surprise because the DA announced earlier, the leader announced that Helen Zille, the former leader, had been suspended. There was some back and forth. She is now officially suspended by the Democratic Alliance.
And that's effective immediately, but they said that her disciplinary process will continue, but she has been suspended with immediate effect from all party activities. Now, when Musi Maimane sort of prematurely announced that on Saturday, Saturday. He said that she would remain premier during this time. So we're suspecting that that will be the case, and her disciplinary hearing is due on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So
after appearing before the DA's disciplinary committee, she was forced to apologize, but she had already exposed her racist ways. Now, after the 2024 national elections, we've seen that the ANC lost its majority in parliament and the DA came second, which led to ANC making a decision to form the government of national unity, basically giving the DA power to make government decisions. This has led to people stating that the ANC has sold us out and that Helen Zille had planned this for a long time, as it seems like she has played the ANC and made them sign contracts that they don't understand. Check this out.
The difference now is that he's going to have to consult parties that are represented in the government of national unity that he's considering for some of those appointments. Is that a tricky part for the president? Does he still somehow maintain the power and that he usually has when he constitutes his government?
We have not considered in the past so many bigger political parties. We did, but have this practice of seeking to embrace and bringing in South Africans through their political parties who we think can make a contribution in government. We have gone way beyond the government of national unity to bring in people into our government. President Mbeki brought the Minister of Technology at that time, Date Musibudi Mangena, from Azapo, which he had one seat. Subsequent to that, President Zuma in his government brought Conor Melder from the Freedom Front Plus. President Ramaphosa brought in Patricia de Lille. The process of consultation is not new. It's an involved process, the question of appointing cabinet, looking at broadly skills, and at the same time consulting the alliance and engaging is quite involved. In this instance, it will mean involvement with political parties that are in the government of national unity and discussing with the president.
People seem to believe that the DA is slowly taking over and is playing the ANC for fools. Zille was recently in an interview with the Carte Blanche where she clears the air and makes it clear about the conditions of the GNU.
Is this a legally binding document? Because it feels like the agreement could fall apart and a party could walk away without any consequences. Should there be a bill which compels parties to stick in the coalition?
Well, first of all, parties can walk away, clearly, but then there's a price to pay. Because we went through this process, we've got a signed document, we're making it public. That is a big defense to make the document public, because then the public will know who is violating the agreement. So that's very helpful. And yes, we do believe there should be laws to govern coalitions. We believe in thresholds. We believe that coalition agreements must be binding. We believe in a number of things. There shouldn't be all that many votes of no confidence in a single term. There's got to be a reason to have a vote of no confidence. All of these things to stabilize the coalitions, and that's why we've got legislation before Parliament right now.
I'll just try to add some of the main points that she mentioned so you can hear her for yourself.
How are you going to navigate that terrain when it comes to opposing and contradicting policies? Foreign policy, when it comes to BEE, when it comes to the NHI bill, which the DA is vehemently against and the ANC is totally for as well. How are you going to navigate those things?
Well, I'm not sure the ANC is totally for some of those things that cost them so many votes, and they'll have to kind of rethink. One of them was NHI that cost them so many votes. So they'll have to rethink a lot of things, but that's why Clause 19 in the agreement is so important. It defines sufficient consensus as being reached when parties that constitute 60% of the government of national unity can reach agreement. Now that is critical because it means that the DA will never be in a position where it's merely propping up an ANC government.
But you're holding them together. Without the DA, the ANC possibly couldn't get enough votes in Parliament to get their decisions through.
Well, what is the choice? The big question in politics, Govan, is always compared to what? Compared to the DA, well, it's not a great... the best option for South Africa would have been if the DA won an overall majority. That would have been happy days for South Africa. But we didn't. So what are the options? And we said we want the least bad option. Now,
so this government is the least bad option?
Of all the options on the table, yes. Because let me put it to you, the other alternative is having the ANC, EFF and MK. That would be the worst of all possible options.
But now we saw the likes of Gwede Mantashe, who's been implicated in the state capture report, being sworn in. Malusi Gigaba was also sworn in. He may not get a cabinet position. But will you accept having to share a cabinet now with people implicated in the state capture report?
We'll certainly accept the justice portfolio if we can get it, because then we can do something about the state capture report. You see, the important thing to realize is that we were very strategically careful, that we would never be caught in a situation where we were merely there propping up an ANC government. We had to have meaningful power. And the backwards and forwards in the final hours through those last 7 drafts was precisely to ensure that we had something meaningful on the table, that we could achieve something meaningful with what we had on the table, and that we were not just a kind of crutch to the ANC.
I mean, all I can say right now is big ups to Helen Zille. After all the allegations against her, she was able to make it back to the top and take charge. Now another thing that I wanna ask y'all is that we've seen Mmusi Maimane as the DA leader, which didn't last, and now Johnston Huisson. But tell me one thing, what are the odds that Helen Zille might actually be the one who bears the most power in the DA and Johnston Huisson is just the face? Y'all let me know what you think of this down in the comments. This is the fall and rise of Helen Zille, and my name is Jay, the host of Moment in Future, pulling you into the truth.